Now, Julia Gillard has lashed out at the Australian newspaper in a media conference prompted by days of rumours about her past work as a lawyer. The incident capped off yet another colourful week in federal politics.
Joining us for the party line this week is the former leader of the Liberal Party, Dr John Hewson. Good morning. And in Melbourne, the former national president of the Labor Party, Barry Jones.
How are you, John?
I'm well, Barry. How are you, mate?
Good.
Barry Jones, if I can start with you, that was almost an unprecedented performance by the Prime Minister yesterday.
Totally unprecedented.
What did you make of it?
I thought she handled it extremely well. I think we're in a tragic position now where the personal dominates policy issues. We don't talk about ideas. What we do talk about is personalities. And I think she was too slow to defend herself earlier on, but I think when she did come out fighting, I thought she was really excellent. And I think there's a consensus even from the Australian, rather grudgingly, that she came out on top, and I think the issue will simply disappeared.
Well, John Hewson, despite all of that, again, the the opposition leader Tony Abbott is saying this morning the Prime Minister still has questions to answer. Do you believe the coalition should drop this now?
Look, I don't know whether they should drop it or will drop it. I do agree with what Barry said. I mean, I do think that Julia had to get out on the front foot. I was surprised she took so long. In my experience in politics, going back to following the Watergate days, I mean, if you come out in front and answer the allegations as clearly and as honestly as you can, that's your best hope in politics. She was slow to do that. Nevertheless, she did a very good job yesterday, and while there are details that might be subject to cross-examination in the Parliament, I think that she's dealt with the major assertions. And in particular, look, she knowingly knew that she was establishing a slush fund, and she dressed it up as something else to get it legal status. But that's, it's been admitted, and unless they've got other specific allegations which she's called for, I don't think it will be sustained. I mean, if they come forward, well, then of course I think she'll need to go out and answer them. But personally, I'm disappointed she didn't make the statement in the Parliament, but I guess I understand where she's coming from.
Well, let's hear a little bit of what Julia Gillard had to say yesterday.
Will the misogynists and the nut jobs on the internet continue to circulate them? Yes, they will.
What do you make of that kind of language?
Well, I think it's a very moderate response to the kind of material that is going out. The media revolution, the transformation of media with the setting out of social media and so on, means if you've got an opinion, doesn't matter whether it's based on, but if you feel it strongly enough, then you'll put it. And you've got the means of communicating it to hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of people. Is it sustainable? No, absolutely not. But you can still say, well, I read something on a blog the other day and the blog said this and that. And I thought, my God, I didn't know that. And it's absolutely mad stuff.
Now, the other big story to play out before we go back to you, John Hewson, was the political storm that followed BHP Billiton's decision to suspend the Olympic Dam mine project. Let's see how some of the politicians reacted to that.
Have you actually read BHP's statements?
No.
I grew up in South Australia, and that is why I am personally offended by the fact the Leader of the Opposition can't be bothered spending 1 minute reading 600 or 700 words about the future of South Australia.
This is false. I read it at about 3:45 yesterday afternoon.
Now, John Hewson, a lot of people, as you would be aware, are comparing that interview with your infamous one with Mike Willesee regarding the GST and the birthday cake before the '93 election. Did you feel any sympathy for Tony Abbott?
No, do give me a break. I mean, I knew what I was talking about.
And what Tony Abbott
I might have given a very long and detailed answer. I still think that answer was right, but it was wrong to actually even try and answer the Willesee question. Now, I don't think there's any comparison there, and I do think that if Tony wasn't adequately prepared for that interview, he's faced the music.
Should he have been prepared for something like that? It was a very big story on the day.
Yeah, it was a big story, and but you can't fault Tony for wanting to sustain his argument as an opposition leader, and I understand again where Tony's been coming from on this, but it is an issue of the costs of that project and the fact that against the likely benefits over a very long time horizon, the BHP has decided not to do it, and there are a lot of elements to that cost. But I do think that Tony allowed himself to be cornered in that interview, and he'll put that one down to experience.
But it was an own goal from his point of view, and because he kept on and on about saying it's the carbon tax and it's the mining tax. That's the reason that that they're not going ahead with Olympic Dam. And Marius Klopper said, no, it's not that. It's completely other reasons. I think the problem that I'm disturbed about with Tony Abbott is that he really sounds increasingly now like an automaton. He's on message. He's saying the same thing over again. I think any minute something's going to slip and he's going to say, your call is important to us. Well, this call may be monitored. But I can't imagine how he allowed himself to go on while specifically repudiating what Kloppers had said. I mean, it's an area where Kloppers had to report to his shareholders. He had to tell the stock exchange why they were not doing what they were doing. There's no reason for him to lie. And in fact, Kloppers went out of his way to congratulate or thank the Commonwealth Government and the state government in South Australia. It was incredibly foolish on his part.
Just on that, I'm sorry, that opinion poll, John, the strategy the opposition leader is playing, we had the news poll out this week that showed Labor's primary vote had in fact jumped 7 percentage points since the carbon tax came in. Do you believe it's time for Tony Abbott to calibrate the strategy he's taking in regarding the carbon tax?
No, I think the damage has been done against the government on the issue of the carbon tax and against the Prime Minister on her integrity, and I think that Tony's going to sustain that at the margin. I won't be surprised, nevertheless, if he doesn't come out and make a few positive statements in some other policy areas in the run-up to the next election. But the thing that surprises me about the current political debate is that when you look at both leaders, both Gillard and Abbott, both have dissatisfaction ratings above 60%, consistently above 60%. The electorate doesn't particularly like either of them. I think the electorate's largely tuning out on all of this right now, and we'll see how it now unfolds between now and the next election.
So, John Hewson, you said that you think Tony Abbott will come out and make some positive statements about policy. What do you think those will be?
Look, I don't know. I'm not part of that process, but I imagine that he's keeping his powder dry. I mean, he's a leader of the opposition. He's running a very effective strategy as a leader of the opposition, and you can't deny the fact that it's worked and it's sustained a very substantial two-party preferred lead in the polls for the bulk of the period since the last election. And I suspect that he will continue to do that. But that's not to say that there isn't a lot of policy work going on in the opposition right now, and that some of that won't be released in the course of the run-up to the next election.
Except, of course, that there does seem to be some indication that the tide is moving in the other direction. In other words, that we're now only 12 months from another election, and there's a very sketchy idea of where the coalition is going. And you see, in a way, the attacks on the economic credentials of the government are really weird. See, for example, when the IMF praised the Australian government and said it was #1 in the world and a model that should be followed, the opposition reaction was to say it was a shot across the bows from the IMF and a warning. Well, you can't do better than #1. And instead of saying, well, that's terrific, no doubt there are a few things we can do at the margin, it was as if they said, oh, it's not a very good report from the IMF. That's absurd.
But Barry Jones,
I think the telling point, Barry, the telling point this week that Abbott could have made was given to him by Martin Ferguson, where he said quite openly, look, the resources boom is over. I mean, that is a very significant admission on the part of the government when their entire strategy is based on maintaining the benefits and the flow-through of the resources boom for years to come. The commodity prices have peaked, and now we have a number of projects being shelved. I mean, that's where the opposition could have focused its attention and made the argument without getting into the detail as to why BHP made its decision. Simply, the decision's been made in the context of a government minister saying the resources boom is finished.
I think he was talking about the kind of global situation to say that if you're looking at internationally what's happening.
No, he came back and clarified and said that the boom in prices is over, but the statement was unequivocal. He said the mining boom is over.
Oh, yeah.
There was a moment of honesty. And look, it's not to say that benefits won't flow for maybe 1 or 2 or several years to come. but there'll be lesser benefits than have been predicted and relied upon. And I think the important question is how we manage the fact that if the resources, the benefits of the resources boom are taken out of our economic performance, how we manage the fact that the rest of the economy, the retail sector, the wholesale sector, the manufacturing sector, domestic tourism, so on, all those sectors are very flat right now, and there's nothing that's going to stimulate them as the resources boom fades.
Final word, Barry Jones. We're running out of time.
I was going to say, but the international scene is, of course, that you've got contraction and you've got flatlining and you've got serious economic indicators internationally, and that obviously rubs off on us.
That's right. China, Europe and the US this week have all had less than satisfactory assessments of their economies.
We'll have to leave it there. John Hewson in Sydney and Barry Jones in Melbourne. Thanks very much.
Thank you.